Welcome back to the channel, everybody. Danilo Kaplick here, aka still the best dressed man in tech sales. And what we're gonna go over in today's video is what are some real strategies that you can use to use psychology in your sales process. That's right. I know a lot of people talk about how can I use psychology in sales? Is it true that I can use psychology in sales? How do I do it? Don't worry, we're gonna answer all those questions right now. All right, guys, so before we get into that, some of you might be saying, hey, Danilo, I know you do sales, but what on earth do you know about psychology and why are you qualified to speak about this? Don't worry, let me fill you in. So number one, I do have a master's degree in industrial psychology from Southern New Hampshire University, graduated with that in 2018. In addition to that, I also have a certificate from the Flourishing Center on positive psychology. And if you're not aware about positive psychology is all about what are the things that make humans flourish in life, all right? So for about 4 years prior to my degree, I was actually studying the work of Martin Seligman, trying to understand how can I improve my own life and the lives of others around me. So that's the background in psychology that I bring, and that's why I'm a little qualified to talk a little bit about this topic today. All right, so the moment you've been waiting for, let's talk about how on earth can we use psychology in sales. All right, the first thing I wanna bring you guys towards in terms of advice or tactical strategies that you can use is number one, it's in our best interest for us and the listener or the person we're speaking with to try and influence the presence or the release of dopamine in the conversation. Now, you guys are probably like, whoa, that sounds really complex. How do we do that? What is dopamine? Don't worry, let's break it down. So if you haven't heard already, dopamine is that chemical in your brain that's the feel-good chemical, right? This comes out when people are taking drugs. This comes out when people are having sex. This comes out when you give somebody a hug. Any kind of pleasurable thing that you could think about, dopamine is released, okay? So for that reason, we want to try and release this chemical in our conversations because it's gonna make the other person feel good and they're gonna associate that good feeling with us, which increases the likelihood that they wanna speak with us again and actually form some sort of relationship. Not really much on the sales side, but it's going to entice them to have a good, favorable impression of us on the first time, and again, increase the likelihood that they speak with us again. Now, you're probably asking, okay, that's cool, but how do we actually release dopamine in conversation? How do we manipulate or stimulate that? Don't worry, I have two specific strategies. Number one is very easy, you guys. All you have to do is put the spotlight on the other person. What do I mean? I mean literally try to have them speak about themselves for as long as possible. And think about why this works, you guys. Think about social media. Social media at the end of the day is a platform that allows us to post about ourselves, our lives, what we're doing, what we're not doing, and it's all about us, right? Even on Instagram, the pictures are all about us. And what happens when people comment about those things? What happens when people like those things? We get that dopamine rush, right? So if we're in a conversation with a prospect or a client, we want to start the conversation and put the spotlight on them for as long as possible. And the way you can do this is by starting with personalized rapport. For example, something I'll do if I'm talking to a prospect that's been at their company for 5+ years, I'll say, wow, it's not often these days I see somebody that's at their company for 5+ years. What's keeping you there, if you don't mind me asking? And then this opens the door for them to talk about their career, how they got there, what they love about the company, maybe what they don't like about the company. And from there, you can ask follow-up questions to keep the spotlight on them. And a little game I like to play is, how long can I go in the conversation without talking about myself? And I think that not only is this very fun, but you start to notice that the other person is really enjoying the conversation because it's all about them, right? And you'll see the smile, you'll see the dopamine getting released, and that's how you know it's working, guys, because they're going to continue conversing and you're gonna lose track of time. So that's the first way that we can influence the release of dopamine in our conversation is by putting the spotlight on the person that we're speaking with, all right? So that's number one. The second strategy that we can use to influence the release of dopamine in our conversations, believe it or not, this is very effective, you guys, but you have to be careful of when you do it, is asking for advice. Right? Now you might be thinking, how on earth is that going to help me in a sales conversation? And is it even appropriate? It is appropriate, especially if you are younger than the person you're speaking with, or the person you're speaking with just has significantly more experience, or their title is very much higher than yours. For example, most salespeople, we're talking to directors, managers, executives. In most cases, the people we're selling to have way more experience than us. So that's a great opportunity for us at the end of the conversation or even at the beginning to say, hey, do you mind if I ask you a personal question? And most of the time they're gonna say, no, go ahead, what's up? And what you can say is, hey, one of my big goals in life is to become an executive similar to yourself. I'm curious, for somebody my age who's grinding it out in sales, what advice do you have for me? And watch what happens when you ask that type of question, guys. People start to light up, they might laugh, they might go at just all sorts of reactions can come out. But what you're going to do is, again, put the spotlight on them. And asking for advice does a very special thing, you guys. It sends the subtle message that, hey, I see you as my superior in some way, and I want to learn from you. Okay, that's exactly what asking for advice translates to. So when you do that, you're putting them on a pedestal, so to speak, keeping the spotlight on them and saying, hey, I see you as my superior, I want to learn from you, and boom, that influences that rush of dopamine, which then they associate with you. So to recap, 2 strategies that we can use to influence that dopamine presence is, number 1, ask for advice, but number 2, keep the spotlight on them for as long as possible, all right? And that's a very, very specific strategy that you can use to influence the release of dopamine in your conversations, which will help you generate a more favorable first impression in any conversation, whether it's sales or in your social life, on a date, whatever it might be, all right? So that's number 1, guys. The second way that we can use psychology in our sales conversations or in real life as well is something called confirmation bias. All right, you might have heard this already. Basically what this means is we are more likely to believe information that confirms what we already believe. Okay, so for example, if I believe that dogs are better than cats and I find information that says dogs are better than cats in these ways, I'm going to believe it more, right? If I believe that using psychology in sales is going to help you hit your quota, I'm going to believe information that confirms that belief, all right? So how do we use this in sales? Very simply, guys. What we have to do is, before we start pitching our solution, before we start talking about our product and service, our features and benefits, all that woo-woo, we need to wait a second, hold up. The first thing you have to do is you have to ask the prospect or customer that you're speaking with, what do you believe is the best way to get this done? Or what do you believe the solution is to this problem? Or what do you believe about the best way to achieve this result that you're looking for, right? Get them to share the existing belief. Okay, that's number 1. Get them to share what they think already, because if your perspective or if your solution completely contradicts their belief, you're going to have a harder time convincing them. And it's good to know that before you share what you're going to share, right? So let's say that they share their belief and it's exactly what you're about to pitch. In that case, you now have a green light to know that, okay, they already believe what I'm about to say, so they're more likely to subscribe to the information I'm going to share. If they have a belief that is very different and nothing related to what you're going to pitch, then you might want to hold back a little bit. And you might want to say things like, that's really interesting. What made you believe that? Or what made you come to that decision or conclusion? Did you hear it from a peer? Is it something you've seen somebody else achieve results from? How did you get there, if you don't mind me asking? And try to learn more about how they arrive at that perspective, because that can give you some additional insight as to how you might want to approach it. And over time, as you gather more information, you might find a way to insert your proposition or your belief, right? And an easy way to do this is maybe asking the question of, do you mind if I share you another way of looking at it? Or do you mind what I've heard from another customer of mine in terms of how to solve this? And if you can make it seem like other people have brought you this information, it's going to be more believable, okay? So that's the second thing we want to use, guys, confirmation bias. Before you start pitching your solution and going willy-nilly with the product, you need to ask them, hey, what is your current belief? What do you believe is the solution? What do you believe is going to be the easiest, most effective way to solve this problem? Extract that belief before you pitch. It's going to make your life a lot easier, okay? All right, guys, number 3, another psychological principle that we can use in our sales conversations or process is the halo effect, all right? If you've never heard of the halo effect, what it means is that somebody's first impression, if they like us, that's going to influence the way that they perceive us as a person. So within the first 10 minutes of meeting somebody, if you are well-dressed, you look good, you sound good, you flatter them in some way, they're probably gonna have a better belief of you overall, even if that's not how your true nature is. So again, this is all about generating a positive first impression within the very first few moments of meeting the person. And you might be asking, especially in the Zoom world that we live in today, how do I even use that to my advantage? How can I actually take action on the halo effect and use it to influence sales conversations? Well, number one, you have to show up looking good. Okay? When you look good, people automatically assume that you're more intelligent, you're more believable, you're more credible, and a lot of other positive traits. But if you don't look good, or for some reason you don't look like credible and respectable, they're going to have a negative judgment of you, and it's going to impact how believable you are, believe this or not. So the first thing that we need to do is appear as presentable as possible, and really if that means showing up looking professional, or just showing up not looking like a slob, having your hair done in a certain way, do that, because that's going to increase your chances of being received in a positive manner. Okay? And you might be thinking about this, wow, Danilo, this is really shallow, like why are we talking about this? Well, think about it in real life, right? Away from business for a second. If you were to buy a very nice car, right? Would you park that car in a bad neighborhood? Right? Probably not. If you needed to find a babysitter and you're interviewing babysitters and the candidate comes in with their hair a mess, they're not dressed well, they're dressed in their pajamas, they're wearing sandals, right? Would you hire them? Let's be real, guys. The way you look really influences the perception of others. So don't think this is just a beauty contest. This is really about survival, and people want to take advice and listen to folks that they think matches a certain vision or look that they're going for, okay? So try your best to show up looking as good as possible, because that's going to help you use the halo effect to generate a positive first impression, okay? The second thing that we can do to use the halo effect to our advantage is show up prepared. Okay, and I know this sounds simple, but seriously, do your research, know a thing or two about the prospect, know about their business, and don't show up with nothing to offer, okay? If you can show up with some tangible value in the form of new information, new ideas, new introductions, that's gonna help you become a lot more favorably viewed, because guess what? You're showing value from the jump, and now they're gonna have that association with you as a part of who you are. So again, guys, show up looking good, bring value, be prepared, be well-versed, and don't show up just bringing yourself and not a lot else, okay? So that's how we can use the halo effect to our advantage to generate a positive first impression. All right, guys, there you have it. 3 psychological principles that you can start implementing and applying to your sales process or your regular conversations today. And again, these things are gonna help you generate a more positive first impression. They're gonna help you have more enjoyable conversations, and they're also gonna help you identify the beliefs of the people that you're speaking to. So with that, guys, if you enjoyed the content, please hit the subscribe button below. Also, if you're not doing so already, please follow me on LinkedIn, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Take it easy now.